honoring that inner voice by saying, this is my truth. But if we understand how much the feeling was a propagation of a previous programming and a particular consciousness that was already in the soul that simply needed to be acknowledged,
then changes everything.
That changes everything.
Okay, so did you like any of the topics?
I did.
Okay, which one did you like more?
I can speak on both.
Mm-hmm.
I think the second one could go further. I think the first one is more targeted.
Okay, so let's start with the second one.
Okay.
I like that.
Okay.
So when I was writing that, what I meant was, I was thinking about it afterwards, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And I was thinking, it's kind of meditation, isn't it? I know, and it's not nothing. Mm-hmm. So we're not going to nothing, but it is an inward thing. So that's what I meant by it. Like pondering things. Like when I go home, mm-hmm. I'll sit and when I take my microdose, mm-hmm. I'll sit for an hour or two still and just be between my emotions and my brain.
Right.
And then when I'm doing that, there's a point at which if things are going successfully, it will go from here to here.
Yes.
And that's what I was talking about.
Yes.
So
that's the goal.
That's the goal.
The goal.
Or just staying here for long enough till you find a pattern over like 3 or 4 days. Mm-hmm. And then you're like, oh shit, I'm circling. And that's what I'm doing over and over again.
Yes. Well, there's a difference between reflection, rumination, and meditation.
Reflection.
Rumination.
Rumination.
And meditation.
So I know what reflection is. Mm-hmm. What is rumination?
Rumination is to cycle.
Okay.
To circulate. So having the same thought applied over and over again with a circular discourse.
Okay.
So there's no process to get to an outcome. There's no resolve.
You're just going through.
You're circulating in the same program.
Okay.
The same set of voices that don't have they don't have resolve. You're having the same conversation with the person in your head over and over again.
Yes.
And you're analyzing and becoming possessed by the conversation.
Yes.
So the rumination is another way of saying I'm trapped in the programming.
Yes.
And if I keep analyzing it, I'm going to get to a result, except instead of coming out into resolve, I go in
further. Which I'm getting away from the. Yes. So okay. So I have noticed mm-hmm. where what is helpful in that place, not always, 50% success rate, I'd say for me, is as soon as I'm going and going. Yeah. So I'll notice that it's the emotion speaking. So what's coming from down up is emotion. And then my brain is like creating a story to match it and to keep it there.
Yes.
So I've noticed the only, not that I'm trying to fix it, but I am trying to get through it. So I've noticed the place where I have most success is like pulling back right there and being like, oh, so do the inner child stuff right now. Mm-hmm. Do you think that's the most effective?
It can be.
Okay.
It depends on what your moment is asking for.
What other things would you try?
Your moment can also be saying, get out of this moment.
Expand. I need more. Because it's always saying, get out of this moment.
Right. So let's say it's an anxious one.
Okay.
And there's a fear pattern that got tripped.
Okay.
And the only thoughts that are circulating is what if, what could.
Yes.
It's going to be, what am I going to do about, you're too close. So that's a myopic position. So my perspective is so close, it's so myopic, it's so narrow. To balance that out, I need to expand and get wider.
And that's at 10,000 or 20,000.
10,000, 20-foot view where you go out, up, and out so that you're not actually feeding the familiar fear response in the nervous system.
Okay. And then sometimes it has to be a 2,500 feet view, sometimes a 5,000 because it's hard to pull into that. So just so whoever would be watching this is caught up. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that we practice together is I take a decent amount of psilocybin. Psilocybin. Both ways. I've heard it both ways. And then at that time, you're there with me always. I don't do this just by myself.
Yeah.
And then at that time, I just pay attention to what's going on, try and remember everything. Yes. And then when I come out of it, we do integration sessions to figure out what that was trying to tell me. So we peer into subconscious mind and then we work on it. So the last one that we did was quite a large amount. And there was a point at which I would say 100,000 feet away from, that's distance wise, that's pretty much where I was. Right. And then, so one of the problems I've been having since is immediately after, I don't know if you remember, but like right before I went to Italy, I was doing great. I was doing the work every morning, 10 minutes of this, 5 minutes of this, do that. Everything was scheduled. And then I went to Italy, spent 2 weeks with my parents, which is going to trigger some stuff and just be annoying. And also I'm out of my house and don't have the dogs and stuff. So when I came back, I was disconnected from that. Yeah. And so when I'm doing the time that I'm spending pondering, half of my frustration is I can't get to that 20,000 view. And I'm shooting for that 100,000 view, to be honest with you. But I can't get to the 20,000. And then when I have extended periods of that, it becomes like, then the story kicks in of it's going forever. It's never going to end. That's when that story kicks in. So how about there? What's the protocol there? What's the best protocol? Let's say.
How often are you in your stillness?
At least 5 days a week. So my routine is I leave work on the dot and I go home 5:30. The dogs are fed. I'm sitting outside in the patio by myself. They're all locked up, so no one's bothering me. So I at least from 5:30 to 6:30, Monday through Friday. I try to get some time in on the weekends as well.
Okay. When you're in these moments where you start to actually feel the sensations building up in you and you're losing your 10,000 foot view and it keeps going more myopic right there. Are you waiting for a sensation to appear or are you demanding it?
Sometimes I can demand it. A lot of times I'm waiting for it to appear.
Okay. So sometimes before we understand how to self-regulate, we're in a sensory interpretation perspective. So I check in, we do body scans, right?
Yes.
What is this in my belly? What's in my heart? I've got this thing in my neck, this sensation, this pressure, this da. It is a fantastic exercise to be able to connect your awareness of nervous system.
Okay.
To connect your awareness around what's going on in your energy field so that you're not dissociating, you're not rejecting, you're not in a place where you're somewhere not present. Because if you're not present, there's no access to what's happening inside of you in the now space.
Correct.
All spiritual paths lead to the now space. Because in the now space, you actually have real things, not past things repeating themselves, not future memories that are fear-driven, trying to navigate and mitigate threat.
And it's also navigable.
Yes.
Navigatable.
It's navigatable.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a good thing. But at one point, when you've done enough scanning, when you've done enough resourcing into yourself to say, oh, that's that one part of that wound that I have, or that's that one program and it sounds like this and it gets tripped up and like this and then it looks like this and it came from my dad, it came from that history, it came from that breakup and like, oh, yeah. It's that thing where it says I'm not good enough. It's that thing that says nothing's ever going to work out for me. Once you've done enough inventory, at one point, you can't take more inventory.
You don't need to.
You don't need to. Because at one point, you have to start being the conscious creator.
Okay.
To stepping into cause rather than being at effect.
And I want to talk about that because there was actually a visual that I had in the first one that I want to talk about because that's important. Yeah. But then, so having gotten to that place where I would arguably say I've done enough work in talk therapy in the last 14 years where I really don't need to take inventory anymore. I'm inventoried out. So having gotten to that place, I'm sitting in my chair. I'm thinking it's around, let's say, the most recent one's been around financial. Mm-hmm. The world's coming to an end. This is going, and the messages are coming, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, I've taken my stock, and I know nervous system wise, there's like a hold here that I'm feeling anxiety right around here, and that started. I know that the anxiety relates to everything will go poorly or fall apart or whatever messages that from childhood. So then now I'm there, okay, and those things are past. What's the next step?
The next step is, if this is what my focus is right now, I can't generate anything new.
Okay.
What I focus on magnifies. What I focus on, I get more of.
That's where I have problems. I know.
So it's no fault of our own, up until the point where we actually know that this is a law that's operating in the mind level, at the universal level of attraction, right? We call it law of attraction, but we don't understand that the words are in fact communicating. Yes, I'd like more of that. Whatever that is, I'd like more of that.
In a different language.
In a different language. Is important. In a language of pictures.
Yes.
And videos and stories and feelings that we're paying attention to, which is good. But at what level do we stop letting that feeling dictate and determine the response of the moment?
Yes.
Because I could be like, oh my God, there it is. And for some people that haven't been able to connect their mind and body, that's actually a good place for them to be. Because if a person is trapped in suppressive patterns where they never felt grief, if they've never been able to actually unpack certain wounds in their childhood around scarcity, right? Sitting with that is a good thing if you're in that place in life. But if you're not, if you've already gone there in yourself, the more you stare at it, the more it can't calculate into something different. So you got to draw a line. Which
is where I think I'm more there. I recognize it. I mean, I totally know, but I'll tell you what goes on from the mind of a patient, right, how this plays out. Mm-hmm. So sometimes I can come with it. And I will tell you, taking up practices like pool, like jujitsu, like Muay Thai have helped, because I get into competition, I feel bad, and I got to power myself through it. And you can't come with like, oh, it's okay, you hit that shot bad. You got to come with, you're the fucking man. Yes. Get back to the table. You're the greatest. You need to hit right now. And when you see the results of that, you're like, oh, that just works. You just tell yourself you're the greatest, and then you're the greatest. That's all it is. But from the standpoint of like being stuck in that, sometimes what happens is I just can't, like, effort wise, it feels like such a great effort to come up with that, that I'm just like, I can't do it today. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not going to happen today. Mm-hmm. And then that's almost like it's pretty deflating. You know what I mean? And so as soon as you admit that, like, you're not getting to your conclusion, you're not getting that out of you on that day. And so do you walk away?
You do walk away.
Interesting.
You walk away because in that moment, if you lack a particular compassion and a kindness for yourself throughout the process of wanting to go from unconscious creator to conscious creator.
Okay.
And you go, motherfucker, I'm here again.
Almost every day.
Dang it.
That's it.
I worked through this and I let this go, and then here's that voice again. Of course there's that voice again. Because in healing, you're going to come to a point where you recognize truth from fiction, and you recognize reality with a capital R versus program conditioning.
Sometimes that doesn't get you through it, though, because I am there.
Sometimes it doesn't get you through it.
I know.
So this is part of the process.
What? And so you just let it be a process.
You have to let it be a process.
Just give yourself a pat on the back and like, hey, okay, so it's not today.
It's not even that it's not today. And we're here.
And that's it.
And this is what I'm learning. I'm learning.
Right.
If you're in a moment where you feel paralyzed and you're like, I shouldn't be here. I know that I cannot be here. I've done it where I'm not here. But today I feel here. Okay. What are you learning? What is this exposing? It feels shitty. Take note. Because when you're in another part of your day or your week, when you're back in a different energy, when you're back in a different availability, then you can go, okay, what did that just show me?
Totally change.
What did that, yeah.
Yeah.
But you don't have to do that in the moment.
So something that I've done that actually has been somewhat effective, not effective in, because I don't like walking away from a session like that and just being frustrated and then like going on with the day. So something that I've done that has mildly worked is I'll just say, okay, today is like one step. Some days you take 5. But when you take one step, you barely move. You don't notice that you're moving. But then 101 steps are 100 steps, which is as good as 25 steps. So that's how I justify it to myself. Yeah. And just like pat on the back. It's like, okay, we got to go. Because this is enough. Yeah. Like I got to get out of this circle. And that's okay.
Yes, because it's part of it.
Okay.
Everything has to be on your plate.
So the worry is when I do something like that every now and then, not every now and then, almost every time, I'm like, well, don't walk away right now because this pattern played and you didn't beat it. And then now you're setting that on record and giving yourself an experience of not beating this record. And you're just going to do this forever if you don't fight it more. So that's maybe too forceful.
Yes.
Okay.
Because you're condemning yourself.
Yes.
And that never works.
Oh boy, that was my whole strategy.
It never works. But it is something that we have picked up from childhood, depending on like who raised you, and if your parents beat it into you enough, you're going to do it. Or if you got too many things taken away from you, you're going to do it. So you adopt those strategies as an adult, and sometimes they work. Sometimes like you can criticize yourself into changing. Sometimes you could beat yourself up enough to go farther. We see that in sports. We see that in goal setting. We see that in like, dude, come on, just push through. Yeah, you can do that sometimes. Is that necessary? Yeah. But that's the difference between vulnerability and fragility. The difference between
vulnerability and fragility. Okay, explain that,
knowing,
please.
Okay, fragility is me thinking I can't get through this moment.
Okay.
And learning a mental strategy or a way of looking at it, telling yourself, you got this. This is fine. We can do this. We got this. Does this kind of feel shaky? Am I tired today? Was I not prepared like I should? Yeah, for sure. Okay, there's a lot of lessons here, and I feel sick. Whatever the concern or the consideration is, fragility is an invitation for strength. It's an invitation for resilience, determination, consistency, commitment. Those are all things that strengthen the soul. It strengthens your ability to navigate life. That's life mastery. But when we're talking about a moment of vulnerability,
okay,
something that trips the wires and something deeper comes up, something emerges that has a history on it. That's a different thing. That's a different consideration. To say like, there's a lot that I'm working through in life right now. And I've got 10% of what I normally have.
In the vulnerability. Okay.
It's letting what is in your system show you some things and know that you're not going to be your best that day. You're not going to operate at 100% in a season. In a season of grief, in a season of change, in a season where you're transitioning from like one system to another system, one job to another job. You're leaving really like there's times where you're going to be in season of tension. There's going to be friction there. It's all for you. It's all for the learning. It's all for the growing and evolution process. But there's got to be a little kindness for that, a lot of kindness, and that's vulnerability.
So basically, what we were saying is, then it's the paradigm change, you want to go into that ruminating voice and then pick it apart by saying like old paradigm, new paradigm. Does this voice match this or this? And then whatever doesn't, ignore, fight.
Yes. No, not fight.
Ignore.
The question, what do I want, is the only question that needs to be answered.
And that's it.
That is it.
And that changes.
It's not about ignoring a thought. It's not about condemning a thought, fighting a thought, trying to push it out. You can't do it. You can't tell yourself not to think something. That's not the operation code. Like, our minds can't process, don't do that. It only goes, oh, you're focused on that. More of that. We don't process negatives subconsciously. The universe doesn't interpret it negatives either. It just sees your focus, and it has the picture in your mind and the feeling attached to the picture that you're vibrating and you're projecting out. And it goes, oh, more of that, got it. And that's how we get stuck in stories, where our narratives start but with one event or a couple events. We see a pattern, we make a meaning out of that, and then we make a rule out of it subconsciously. And then that rule is now responsible for interpreting every event that happens thereafter that resembles what that was,
Yes.
whether it was the person or the energy or the environment or some stimulus that you've got now a memory of. And then you also have a rule for how you need to act, how you need to treat the situation, how you need to either get out of there or fight it or, oh, what does this mean about me that this is happening? Well, they didn't call me back because I'm an unlovable person.
And we talked about this last session you had.
Right.
Is that you said there's definitely something that you've made up a story about.
Yes.
And you're flying into that, and then you're acting differently as a result of that story, and then everyone else is responding to that.
Yes. That's one of the biggest reliefs and liberations a person can ever give themselves.
That was mind-blowing.
Liberation from the story that keeps producing the environment you're getting.
That was, so I will tell you.
It's big.
It is big.
It's huge because there's so much victim around that naturally.
Yeah, because it's out of your control.
Because you're like, but they're doing it and it's being done to me. And I saw like, how is it that one person experiences that all the time, but another person doesn't?
Right.
And you can cross-compare different realities to be like, oh, I'm always in a fight. I've never attracted a fight. Or I always have legal issues. I've never had a legal issue.
Right.
You know, how is it that we live in the same society with the same certain circumstances or opportunities? Not that we're all in the same upbringing, but like we're all under the same law. Or we're all under the same ways of like, I can go outside and something will happen to you, but it won't happen to me.
And all things are achievable for all.
And all things are achievable. Like if we're just starting right there, and that's going to be uncomfortable for even anybody to hear right now because they're going to be convinced looking back at their story and be like, not for me.
Yeah, it's like I grew up poor, you didn't grow up poor, this happened to me, I know. But that's the whole thing, that's what we're saying. That's the story.
That's the story.
So it's like, yes, some circumstances we can sit here and talk ourselves into making it, but we can also sit here and use that same amount of energy to try and talk ourselves out of it.
100%.
Which is tough.
Yes.
Even if you know it, because so you and I had a session, I think it was the last session that it was, and you told me basically you're acting differently. So then I approached that. I thought about it for a couple hours. And I was like, could it possibly be that I could cause other people to act differently? So I'm like, well, it doesn't matter. If you can't figure it out exactly right now, why don't you just do this? Why don't you just go in with like almost cockiness, because you don't have the self-confidence. So just go with cockiness for now and then let that start to roll and maybe you'll get some self-confidence out of it. And I did. And then I started to see differences. I'm like, God damn it. So it was me the whole time. And that's what was getting reflected back. It's very confusing. It's confusing.
That right there. My world is reflecting back what is in me.
Right. That's what was happening.
That's what's happening.
Yeah. So I was just thinking it, and then it was just coming at me in that direction.
Unbiasedly.
Right.
Unbiasedly. Like it's not out to get anyone.
No.
It's just unbiasedly reflecting, because that's the law and nature of the vibration.
You asked, here it is.
You said, well, I didn't say it with my, no, but you keep thinking it and you keep giving this attitude. So if I keep giving this attitude, that's a vibrational reality that you're literally unconsciously constructing. And if I'm in this attitude, I could be saying nothing and somebody walks by and they're unconsciously tripped by it. And they're like, what the fuck? And you're like, I didn't say anything. I was like, okay, but I just feel weird around you. And then you're giving that face. And you're like, what face? Because we're so unconscious to our micro mannerisms and our energy that I could be saying nothing. I'm totally holding it back, but I'm like, the most inauthentic energy is coming off you right now, and I don't trust you. And you're like, what did I say? What did I say? Because in my mind, I'm like, I don't fucking trust anybody in here. But you don't know that, because I'm here to play the game. And it's like, but people know that without knowing that they know that.
And they get it.
And they get it. And they read it, but they don't even know what they're reading.
So one of the things we kind of were planning what to talk about was, and I think this relates, and that's why I'm bringing it up. So this relates. So in what I've been doing, after I started working with you, I started to have big changes internally. Once I started to have the big changes internally, emotionally, where I wasn't having them in the past, then all of a sudden I felt this desire. It's like, I need to exercise. I need to eat better. I need to go get a giant tattoo on my arm and leg. You know what I mean? Like I started just going in it, and one progressed to the other. And so what I was talking about, the kind of like cockiness, it does work. So I'll tell you what's a crazy trick. It does work if you just start with the body language.
Yes.
And then and then you start with the body language, it's kind of received, and you're like, oh, this person's receiving it well. And then it makes you actually feel it. So the fake it till you make it. And then if you can't muster up the energy to do that, the best thing you can do is go after diet and exercise, because those will create the change incrementally, I'm imagining, no?
Well, you also see it actively progressing. If we need results now.
Yes.
This is the only reason why we have a dopamine-centered, addictive society with this technology and the give me now, and the I'm not satisfied and I can't wait and I need it to happen
this
now. This moment. Like we have now lowered our ability to be serotonin-driven, committed individuals.
Yes.
Because our ability to be satisfied long-term has diminished significantly.
Oh, so serotonin is long-term, dopamine is short-term?
Yes.
That's what broke it then.
Our phones are the worst challenge.
To it all.
Because I don't have to wait for an answer. I can demand one.
Right now.
I don't have to wait to tell you next week how I feel. I'll just tell you right now. I don't have to wait to try to get a response or get the answer. I can do it right now. And that is training us to be less stable emotionally.
So it's going for the dopamine as opposed to the serotonin.
Right. And that's part of the way that we self-regulate, is to cope with loss, or cope with not having, or cope with experiencing the benefit of what I have in front of me, and actually gratifying in that experience, as opposed to just, oh, got it, what's next? Because I don't remember which study it was, but they were studying the science of how people determine happiness when they pursue. And it was less about what you get and more about the fact that in the pursuit of having, I experienced the satisfaction. Because the moment that you get it, you want something new. So it's never really about the thing. It's about the feeling that I get when I actually possess a thing for the first time, thinking that I gave that thing so much of my emotional energy, thinking that once I get it, that's it. That's it. I'm happy. And not really, because I have to want that over and over again to actually get the benefit of it.
So I do know from Andrew Huberman, I'm a huge fan of his. I do know that from his whatever he has on YouTube, that dopamine was created to just keep us going, to get us water, to keep us. So then the serotonin is long term. So how do the two relate? So now the question being, does constant and like frequent and scheduled releases of dopamine, which you get from hard work, going after things, whatever, does that translate into serotonin, or are they separated?
They're separate pathways.
They are.
They're separate pathways, but they're conjunction because you need both.
Yeah.
Absolutely need both. You need dopamine to get I'm progressing and I'm growing and look results, and you need serotonin for satisfaction, fulfillment, and for things that are actually producing fruit in your life.
Okay. We've never talked about this before. And I am slowly realizing that all my pursuits are out of dopamine, maybe. It's possible. I'll have to sit down and analyze it.
You can also look at the things that are long-term strategy and see the serotonin satisfaction involved in knowing that I'm walking towards a year-long goal or a multi-tiered level goal, and that's exciting. And to deal with the temporary excitement, I'm going to give myself something small to win.
Oh, okay. No, so I'm okay.
Yeah.
I'm okay. It's balanced.
No. Yeah, you're
okay.
You're balanced.
Sorry.
You can't do what you're doing and operate the way you're operating now if your serotonin isn't on.
Okay.
It wouldn't work because you would have crashed a long time ago and you would have sabotaged it.
And
You're not doing that.
Okay.
No. You have enough. What you're wanting to do is navigate healthy dopamine.
Yes.
That is in service to your goals. That is not a response to wanting to escape the uncomfortable moment by picking up my phone or calling this person or going after that stimulant or like that kind of thing. That's what we're trying to bring back is all of the things that I find to be dopamine sensory producing. I want to make sure that all of those things are actually on target.
Oh. Because that's important.
Because it's important. It's like I have this idea about who I should be. I have this idea that inspired born or passion born or I want more of this thing I experienced at one time or I daydream about this. There's a blueprint in our head about how things ought to be. And if we're not in that blueprint, we're not satisfied. It's a simple equation. And so I'm either in the life that I said that I would like to be living or I'm not. And the question is, well, in what ways am I not? And then how can I...
The smaller patterns that are causing.
You
can really look at where you're getting the dopamine and just figure it out, really.
100%.
Because that's basically it.
And it's not a pathway of condemning.
No.
It's a pathway of convicting and owning.
And understanding. Yeah.
That's it. It's like if I have this and having also a mild compassion as well for the fact that these things and this world that we're living in right here.
We have to use them.
We're using them. Mm-hmm. And at what point are they using us?
So I do have a firm no social media rule. Haven't had it for 15 years. And that's been working out actually excellent for me. So yes. I feel like with that, it would be a lot harder to navigate because I do look at YouTube though. That's like my vice.
Yeah.
But I don't spend time on I only know of Instagram at this point. Everything else that I knew is gone, but I don't spend time on that trying to figure out what other people are doing or whatever. I feel like that would make it tougher because
it makes it infinitely tougher.
Yeah.
Because you're also downloading content from other people's realities.
Which is bullshit too, but.
Right. But it's also, we're trying to sit there and borrow. We're borrowing how the health should look, and we're borrowing how money should look, and we're borrowing how I should be spending my time, and it should look like this. And that's not bad. Because if we're stuck without a model to follow,
it's a great way
to go find a model to follow. But when you go and you try to emulate one person or one influencer or one pathway, and you try to put all of you into that pathway without looking at what's being given to you and saying, well, what's the consciousness behind that? What are the routines attached to that? What did that person go through to produce what they're producing? like, is that my pathway? If we're not constantly asking, like, that's a great thing, does that work for my life? Then we're going to adopt somebody else's pathway, feel excited because we want the result of that pathway that they experienced.
Right.
And then I'm going to have to modify who I am to fit that pathway.
Which is what we were talking about when, remember, whatever that podcast is that like the guys that just beat up on women, and I was talking to you, and I was like, it's weird because it's like some of the stuff they're saying to help guys out and some of the stuff they're saying in anger.
Yes.
And it's like, hopefully people are navigating this properly.
That they're able
because
to
some of it makes sense. And you're like, oh, this makes sense. You're making sense.
Right. What people want to do when they're consuming copious amounts of information, because that's what we're doing. People are hungry. People are hungry, but they're not learning. We think that we're information gathering and that's going to help us. We need to study. We're not learning the way that we used to. And because we're not learning, we're not digesting, and we're not actually qualifying the information.
And I think it's important to note that when you say study, that act is taking the information, understanding it, and then running it through the filter of your personality and character.
Correct.
And running it out to see if that's how it's supposed to look
and
for you.
breaking it down and questioning to say, like, that streamline. When he said that about women should be and they ought to, is there a principle there that he's following?
And what's the fundamentals?
And what's a fundamental? Like, what is the ethical quality of that? What kind of a person would say that? Does that work for everyone? Like, there's a qualification around every theory and modality and offering that people are out here saying to say, well, what are the principles behind that?
Right.
Because if I can get higher principles of life, then I can move my life in a higher direction. But if I'm taking somebody's advice, right? Not a bad thing, but qualify it. Like, where do you come from and how does this work for you? Does this work all the time? Sometimes just in that situation? Does that work for the kind of person that you want to be? Like what are the qualifications here? And that's part of actually adopting a studious mindset when it comes to this stuff, because we don't sit down and actually through social media, we're not we're not interacting. And through conversation, people learn the best.
Yeah. And also, I will tell you, one of my greatest strengths is that everything goes through the filter. I don't care how much I admire that person. Everything goes through my filter. And then I didn't even know, before I started working with my therapist 14 years ago, I didn't even know I had a filter. Right. So I didn't know, I was supposed to, that's the way that I was running as well, because it's less complicated. If this person is achieving these things and then they're telling you to do this, and there's a group of them that are telling you to do this, and it sounds kind of right. It's like, I should just do that. So that was easier. And then through therapy and through kind of self-work, I found myself and my own character, my own personality. And then now it's like, it's automatic. Everything always goes through. It's like, I don't like that part of it. And there are some parts where I will admittedly take the wrong role, where I'm like, I'm a little bit of a rule breaker. Like, I'm not, like, I get it. I get you're supposed to follow the rules. I get that's the right way to do it, the harder way. But it's like every now and then I'm going to give it to myself, because I have a little, we call it shaytun in Farsi, which is like, just menace part of me that just needs to break some rules sometimes. Like, that's just what and then I can you know what I mean? So I like that. I like that the filter is the right way to do it, because it sounds like it's pretty much the processing is through the filter.
But it's also, we have to know that we even have one to begin with.
So how about this?
That's so good.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's really hard to figure it out, though. It took quite a while. I didn't even when my therapist started, I have no idea. When she kept saying, like, you need to find out more about yourself, I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. You know what I mean? It's hard to understand that. It is. So I will say one thing that's pretty important is the way that now, as information passes through, one of the things I use is my gut. So, like, I'll watch a video and then my gut will spark. Like, I'll feel something to that video. And I'm like, I don't even understand. This is such a stupid video. The other day, I saved it. The other day, it's such a dumb video. And, like, I hit it and it just caused this, like, huge bump up in emotion from my lower stomach.
Yeah.
And I was like, there's something in here. So I gotta think about this. And I put it aside. So so let's put it this way. How often, number one, are you getting gut checks?
Personally?
Yeah, on something that you watch on a video, on something that you see, and then
All the time.
So, but how do you differentiate? Because I drive by a homeless guy and I see him and like it's 110 out and this poor guy's sweating and I'm just like, oh man. But it's like, do I really need to go into detail and start to analyze that? Or it's like, no, we already know why you feel bad for that person.
Yeah.
So move on.
Yeah.
So how do you differentiate the gut checks into ones you should look into and ones that you don't need to really?
Are they relevant to what you want?
Are they? Can you expand on that a little?
Yeah. I could entertain all kinds of information just to entertain it.
That's the worry. You know what I mean?
Entertain information. I can say, is this relevant to my day? Is this relevant to what I'm after in life? Am I in pursuit of this knowledge?
I see.
Because if not, I'm in one giant distraction.
That's what the worry is. That's what my worry is.
And that's okay. It's not that it's not. You have too much information out here. Not everything is for everything. There's a scripture that says everything is permissible, but not everything is beneficial.
Yes. Everything is permissible, but not everything is beneficial.
Correct.
And that's the issue with the gut checks.
And there's a big issue with that, just operating at a conscious level in humanity right now with people wanting to do what they want to do. Great. You're permitted to be however you want to be. It is not always of benefit to yourself.
Yeah.
You're like, I have permission to speak the way I want to speak. Congratulations. That's great. You want that authority in yourself. Did you qualify the content of your speech? Did you qualify the effect that you'd like to be having on the environment? How are you in speaking what you're speaking? What does that say about your character? Like, what are the qualifications? We're not qualifying enough.
Which is really what's happening with a lot of these like newer woke kind of protesters that they're just trying to get a rise out of someone and they don't even care about the fundamentals of what they're talking about.
When you've empowered people to use their voice and you haven't given them principles or fundamentals to stand on, then what comes out is emotional sentiment. That's it.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not that it's worthless information, but it's worthwhile to ask myself, what exactly am I creating with every word that I speak? You know, am I saying this because I feel empowered finally in my life and I felt voiceless and like, great, amazing. Get through that though.
And then get to the real stuff.
And then get to the real stuff where you're saying, I'd like to make this, I want to put this out into the world and I'm going to make sure that it's as beneficial as I can possibly make it.
Right.
Because then there's consideration, there's thought, there's what's backing what I'm saying right now. Like, is there, am I just simply wanting to light the room on fire because I like to watch things burn?
That's what it feels like. But they do have a smidget of truth to them. But they're really twisting that smidget of truth, and then it becomes this thing where you're like, okay, but that's not. You're blowing out of proportion here.
Yeah.
So okay,
there's not a lot of listening. That's why. I
had you know me. I'm a pure form capitalist. I think I can. I don't think there's a bigger capitalist in the world than me. But I had this from the time Trump got elected, because that's when everything kind of peered up.
Right.
I had a time where I was just like, yeah, but they're kind of saying stuff where it's true. It's like healthcare should be free. Everyone should have, you know, the minimum requirements of like home and whatever.
Yeah.
But it's like, and then also it has to be all of the other things. Like, no, but those things are too much. Right. And I had a hard time with that whole thing. Right. I think a lot of people are caught up in that.
They are.
There's like, you have to believe everything or nothing. It's like, no. You can just take the piece that sounds right to you.
100%. And I mean, this is the unfortunate situation of having an opposition, an oppositional reality to anything. If you're not for us, you're against us. And if you're on this side, then you're with us in all of these categories.
Trevor Noah said the coolest thing ever. Did you hear his quote?
No.
He was asked by the 2020 lady. He said, "Did Dave Chappelle cross the line?" And he said, "It would depend on which side you're standing on, whether he crossed it or not, because how are you looking at the line?" So it's like that's exactly the polarization of it. Is it good though, maybe? Is it good that people do this under high intensity so that
do what specifically?
Fight, argue, bring up uncomfortable topics? Do you think maybe that's part of the human condition that like unless we're uncomfortable, we'll just like let these things go and just ignore them? Do you think let's talk about movements like BLM, right?
Good question.
Right. So
you're talking. What I'm hearing is that you're drawing attention to the human condition.
Mm-hmm.
You're drawing attention to how the ego operates, and you're also drawing attention to how society evolves.
Yes.
And how ideas formulate and they get elevated.
Don't they have to be at a heightened state? There
has to be tension for development.
That's it.
Absolutely. And there will be friction before we grow.
And it's calm.
And it's, and that's where debate in intellectual spaces have served ideas evolving and forming new ways of thinking about anything in society that matters to the function of society.
That's it.
They've always stood in a room. You don't have every scientist agreeing. You don't have every medical professional agreeing.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have every teacher agreeing. You don't have every politician agreeing. Because we're sitting here wanting to conversate because each of us carries a unique way of interpreting what's happening through the filters, but also from a higher place, that our unique design is meant to actually process reality in a particular way.
And actually, if you think about it, this is the same concept on an individual level, right? Mm-hmm. It's like you get that heightened sense, the grief, the thing that finally drives you over because it's pointing to attention to it. And in the past, what you were doing was ignoring it, essentially. So it's happening on the same individually.
Yes.
It's happening on the same thing. So basically, the gut check.
Yeah.
To go back to it, the gut check, the importance and significance of what you're feeling to what you're going through is what you really want to be paying attention to.
You do want the gut check, but you also want to qualify, where was I when I had this sensation happen? Because you can, oh God, I could go off about this all day. Because there's a popular method of honoring, I don't know why I use quotations, honoring, but it is, it's true, of honoring that inner voice by saying, this is my truth, and this is how I'm feeling, and this is why I'm going to go do it because I feel this way. But if we understand how much the feeling was a propagation of a previous programming and a particular consciousness that was already in the soul that simply needed to be acknowledged,
then changes everything.
That changes everything. Because now I'm like, well, what part of me is saying we want to go this way because we feel this way? I feel like I want to go off on you right now, so I'm going to go do it. I feel like I want to leave my husband right now because I felt trapped this whole time. I want to leave my husband and my family. And it's like, something's talking to you.
Right.
Let's acknowledge that. But for a second, let's not qualify the feeling.
And just go run with it.
Just run with the feeling. It's just like, I'm going to do whatever feels right, whatever feels me. No, we need to really give distinction to what feels right and what is right.
And again, that goes back to the filter. It has to go through your filter.
To the filter, but it's got to operate from higher understanding. If there's no higher understanding guiding it, to say, this is the principle that's at play here.
Right.
This is why you're reacting the way you're reacting. This is what it's exposing in you. This is why you're feeling what you're feeling. And the question is this the kind of thing you want to keep producing?
Right.
What comes after this feeling? What pathway does that lead you down? What are the results? What are the possible results of that pathway? Like, there's none of that qualification. And so we're in a feel-good culture.
I know.
And we don't actually, there's no stopping to consider that maybe the pathway that I'm walking down doing this is actually not beneficial
to what I'm trying to get.
To what
done.
I'm trying to really get.
And we talked about this once. So what you do and kind of the work that you do with all the plant medicines, it's like you do it at this ultra high level. And then we were talking about it and like you even mentioned, you're like, not everyone's done 10 years of therapy and is ready to do it on this level. But it's like, but even the people that haven't, it will peer. So maybe for their particular place of where they are, that's just the level they're operating at, which is frustrating because we put so many hours into it. But I gotta imagine it takes the same amount of effort for them to do it. You know what I mean? It has to. So one of the things, though, I will tell you about this whole like paradigm shift and taking things through your filter and your lens that I've noticed is that there's a fear that if you run things through your filter, then everything will change and then you won't get the things that you want because you won't want them anymore. And that's a big one that stops me all the time. I feel like it's of like importance enough to start mentioning, and it's not the way that it works. So I fight with this one all the time. So it's like I take my want for like a big company or capital or whatever. And I'm like, if you really run that through the filter, you're going to see that's not what you want. You want it for bullshit reasons. And then I run it through the filter and I'm like, no, it's not. I got the right reasons. So that fear is one of the things that can probably stop you, I would imagine, from running through the filter. What are some other like bullshit things that we've lined up to prevent ourselves to take things through the filter? Do you know other ones?
I mean, that's a really good.
There's a bunch of them, huh?
I think it's personally dependent on what kind of internal strategies a person uses for comfort.
Funny, because now my internal strategy for comfort is to internally be kind of aligned. And so that's the way, that's why I'm operating the way that I'm operating.
Which is you're operating from a higher pattern of wholeness. That's you want to be comfortable in alignment.
Yes.
You want to be uncomfortable out of alignment, but most of us begin comfortable out of alignment.
It's weird.
Yeah. And then to get back into alignment, we have to deal with the fact that we've never been in that position before. And even though I don't like being in my addictions, in this sabotage, I don't like the fact that I keep going back to the same person over and over again. I don't like the fact that I keep starting things and then quit halfway through it.
It's comforting.
But I get it and I know it and I can run this game all day. I can run it all day. And for some reason, to the mind, that qualifies as safe.
Well, then I do that too, then, to a certain degree. It's safety for me sometimes is just being worried because that's just all I knew my whole life.
It's familiar.
That is. And then in my head is, and this was taught to me in therapy, it's like, yeah, I'm worried and that's good because that's going to get me to get enthused and then fix the problem. I'll find a solution. I won't be worried. It's like, no, you'll just be worried about something else. You know, this is what you're going to do for quite a while if you don't stop it. So that's what I'm learning. Right. But I do right now. Definitely I should be adding, and now talking about it, I'm kind of realizing it's like, no, add that component in there that like, you're just comfortable being in anxiety sometimes because of you're used to it, but then your internal state is not an anxious person. Uncomfortable